Perspective Shift is brought to you by fdailycoaching.com. If you're seeking assistance to help navigate you through a difficult time or feel challenged to reach your full potential, Frank Daly can guide you to a perspective that will allow you to utilize your imagination and experience a more fulfilling and satisfying life. Frank has been working with people for over 20 years as a coach, helping them understand the power they have to transform their lives.
Welcome, Dr. Bradley Nelson, to Perspective Shift.
Yes, welcome. How are we doing, Dr. Bradley Nelson?
Fantastic. Thanks for having me on, guys. Great to be here.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. Well, this is really good for us. We like this.
Yeah, we're excited to feature you. You've got a great story and a great history, and we know it'll be something special for the audience.
Yeah, I was telling Mike years ago. We watch Guy a lot, and I was watching Meredith, Regina Meredith.
Regina Meredith, yeah.
Yeah, and you were on her show, and I remember watching that, and I'm like, because I've studied other, briefly studied other modalities in this world of trying to figure out how to work the body, get energy out. And when I came across yours, I'm like, I like this. It's simple. It's right to the point. And I know a lot of people are like, oh, if it's simple, it can't work. I'm like, well, it's quite the opposite. You start to think about it. Like, we tend to complicate things. People are like, oh, you're a deep thinker. I'm like, no, I'm a surface thinker. It's just all the shit we piled on top of it made it seem like it's deep. And I like how you bring the simplicity to it, because I believe life, this is why most people are aggravated, because at some level we know it's supposed to be easier or simpler, right? There's always going to be challenge. That's the beauty of this life. But to get through those, it's supposed to be simple. So yeah.
It's really interesting. The work that I've been doing as I was developing this work, what's fascinating about it is that it started out more complicated, and then as it kept going, it became simpler and simpler. It was really this process that took years, where puzzle pieces would gradually come together, and I gradually came to understand more and more about how our bodies really work. And it's so interesting because now, to me, it's so obvious that if you have any kind of a symptom, whether it's migraine headaches or neck pain or back pain or knee pain or infertility or asthma or digestive disorders or depression or anxiety or phobias or panic attacks or PTSD or eating disorders, or a symptom of not being able to find your soulmate, or a symptom of not being able to make enough money or break through the glass ceiling, or whatever it is, all of those things are like the check engine light in your car. And they're not really the problem, is what's kind of bizarre about reality, the reality of our bodies. Those things you'd think would be the problem, but they're not really the problem. Those things are like the check engine light, telling you that, hey, there's something else wrong that's causing this symptom, whatever it is. And so this work that I'm, helping to bring into the world, really, the emotion code and the body code, they're really all about that idea that that these symptoms are really a check engine light that are indicating that there's something else going on. And in Western medicine, the symptom is the problem for the most part, right?
Yeah.
If your problem, if you've got asthma or something, well, they give you some kind of chemicals, right, that can help to open the lungs. It's a temporary sort of a thing. If you got migraine headaches, they'll give you some kind of chemicals that will help to ease the pain, but then everything has side effects, right? And those are temporary things. And sometimes those temporary measures like that to turn off the check engine light, the symptom, sometimes those things can be great. But most of the time, those things are really only good for short term, to help you be more comfortable and so on. But they don't really get to the underlying causes. It's kind of like if your check engine light comes on in your Maserati and you put a piece of tape over it, you're going to have a really expensive bill coming up soon.
I love that. Great analogy.
Get rid of the red light, but not the problem. Yeah.
So we talk about Western medicine a lot on this broadcast. Do you share these concepts often with doctors and people in passing, et cetera? I'm sure there's doctors that come to your conferences and come and listen to you speak. Are you starting to see any type of change? Because I mean, personally, I'm seeing this within, the doctors that I talk to. These concepts are coming up more and more. It's hard to not address them?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Just the other day, we had a medical doctor who contacted us and said, "Look," he said, "I don't really know anything about what you're doing, but I want to sign up. I'm in."
Yeah.
20%, they say, of all the doctors and nurses have actually left the profession since COVID started.
Oh, wow. All right.
Wow.
Because of how that has all
Yeah.
gone. And so, but yeah, it's also about consciousness. The way I look at it is the consciousness of the world is like a balloon, and it's getting bigger and bigger and bigger every day a little bit. It just keeps expanding. And I think it's in every area of human endeavor. Consciousness is expanding, and we're waking up, and it's really interesting. And we see the world in turmoil because these old power structures that have had control over humanity for so long, they don't like this consciousness expansion thing. They want to hold on to their power, et cetera. And so we see all kinds of weirdness going on in the world because of that. But there's no stopping this process. It's going to keep continuing, and that's part of this part of the work that I've been so privileged to be able to help bring into the world with the body code and the emotion code. Really fundamentally what it is, it's the idea that the subconscious mind within each one of us is a computer, and it knows what we actually need. And we were talking a little bit earlier about how I was going to school in Hawaii in 1980, and I took a class just on a whim on computer programming, and I learned how to program in the basic language. And I had never touched a computer before that. It was just totally, I just needed an extra class. But that changed the whole course of my life because I just absolutely fell head over heels in love with programming, became a programmer, had a business called The Computer Tutor back in the early 80s. And people would buy a computer, they wouldn't know what to do with it. There was no software. So I would write the software. And I really enjoyed that. And I thought I was going to do that for the rest of my life, and I would have been totally fine doing that. But that was part of my path. Steve Jobs said once that you can't connect the dots looking forward into your life, but you can connect the dots looking backward.
Yeah.
And so that was a really necessary step for me to become a computer programmer, because when later it was really actually an answer to prayer for me to go into the healing arts. And I had decided as a 13-year-old, when I was healed of kidney disease by some alternative doctors, and this is when Western medicine had nothing to offer me, and my life was kind of hanging in the balance, that I decided I wanted to be a doctor, and I wanted to be a doctor like the people that had helped me, and they were kind of holistic, and they practiced out on the edge of town in a trailer house in the middle of a wheat field.
Yeah.
Now, what kind of modalities they use on you at that point?
They were old-time osteopathic doctors.
Okay.
And so when the osteopathic profession kind of gave up its own identity and sort of joined the medical profession, what happened was osteopathy was becoming a bigger and bigger threat to organized Western medicine, allopathic medicine. And so essentially what happened was allopathic medicine came to the osteopathic people, and they said, "Look, you can become MDs like us and prescribe drugs and so on and do surgeries and things." And so they decided they were going to do that. Well, these two doctors decided they didn't want anything to do with it. And so they stayed out of it and kind of just practiced on their own, but had lots and lots of people that would come to them. I mean, people would charter buses from other states to come and see them. That's really how amazing they were. So I decided that's what I was going to do. And so, an interesting thing that happened when I was 13 years old, I can remember lying on my back on their treatment table, looking up at them and saying, "When I grow up, I want to do what you guys do." And they were very, and they were very discouraging. They would say to me, "No, you don't." They'd say, "If you go to chiropractic school or naturopathic school or one of these kinds of schools," they said, "they'll fill your head so full of fixed ideas that when you get out, you won't even be able to think for yourself. You'll be like a zombie." And, I believe these people had saved my life. And so I believed everything they said. So eventually when I went to chiropractic school, man, I was really on guard. No matter what anybody said as being the best way to do this or that, I always took it with a grain of salt, and I would always think, well, maybe that is true, and maybe it's not true. And then I remember sitting in class one day, and my neurology instructor, a guy named Dale Nansell, amazing guy, was talking to us about how the brain is essentially a computer. And at the time, I was actually helping to put myself through school by programming the admissions office software at the school.
That's so funny.
They'd come get me out of class all the time, you know, and my classmates hated it, but you know, they'd run into things. They'd run into a bug and I'd have to go fix it. But anyway, I'm sitting there and he was talking about how the brain's a computer. And I can remember sitting there thinking, wow, the brain's a computer. I wonder if it has a back end. I wonder if we'll ever figure out how to access the brain, because it must know what's really wrong with people. That would be amazing, right?
Yeah.
And that is exactly what this work is about.
Yep.
In a nutshell.
Was that really first spark?
That we can access the computer.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit to that, like with the engineering background and everything you're sharing there. So how would you best describe the brain, you know, as a computer, and like use it with like Western medicine? Are we like going in and trying to physically replace parts rather than rewrite the software? You see what I'm getting at?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, really, it's more complex than that. It's actually far more complex than we can even begin to wrap our heads around, because it has to do with consciousness and the subconscious. So if you think about it, we all have a conscious mind, and our conscious mind is, for example, we're doing our interview, you know, we have our relationships, we live our lives, work our jobs. When you go to sleep, the conscious mind shuts off, and what's left is the subconscious. Well, I believe that the subconscious mind is by far the vast bulk of our intelligence. If you take conscious and subconscious and you combine them together and you think about that as the total intelligence of a human being, the conscious mind is an almost infinitesimally tiny part of that intelligence. And if you think about, for example, you know, they say that a single cell is equivalent in complexity to a full-size aircraft carrier, with jets on the ramp, with their engines spooled up, ready to take off, and thousands of people working at their own individual jobs, and radar and electronic countermeasures and all kinds of things. That's a single cell. That's how complex a single cell is. And they say now that, you know, the latest estimate is we have 37 trillion of those. Yeah. Which is like the national debt almost, I think.
It pretty much is.
Right. Close.
Yeah.
But anyway, the subconscious mind, I believe, is aware of every single one of those cells and the whole history of every cell and every particle of every cell, and down to the quantum level and even beyond that. I mean, and so, you know, every face that you've ever seen in a crowd, I mean, every moment of your life is recorded. And when people have an experience where they're about to die, oftentimes their whole life will flash, you know, through their mind in detail, right? And there have been studies that have been done where they found that, for example, people who, under certain circumstances, people who are having brain surgery and they're awake, because that's often how they do it, if they touch the brain with an electrode they touch a certain part of the brain, all of a sudden a memory will come back to someone, and it's a memory that would not normally be remembered, but all of a sudden, you know, they're lying there on the table, their brain gets touched with an electrode, and suddenly, oh yeah, geez, Thanksgiving dinner in 1983, and here's Grandpa. I can smell the turkey, right? So it's really wild. The brain is the hardware, really. The subconscious mind is more like the software, and it has to do really with the fact that we really all have two brains. We have this analog computer up here, that's the brain, but then we've got this other computer that is the heart, and it's so interesting because, you know, anciently they believed that the heart was the seat of the soul and the source of love and creativity and romance and the core of our being and all those things. And in the West, we've never really given any credence to those old ideas, because with the beginning of the Industrial Revolution, really, we thought, okay, we've got this figured out. Here's a machine. The body's a machine. All the organs in the body, they're all just machines. The body's a machine. Well, Western medicine is still operating on that fundamental premise. And so if a machine is failing, well, you just remove it, or you could put in maybe a new one, right? But Western medicine doesn't really pay a lot of attention to prevention, and there's a whole other realm going on, and that's this realm of quantum physics. Well, back in the 1960s, when doctors first started doing heart transplants, it didn't take long before they noticed something weird, that people sometimes would come back into them and they would report that with their new heart, they had received other things, like, now I love baseball and I go to all the games. I didn't care for it. Can you explain that? Or they'd say, my taste in music or food or sports totally changed. Or they'd say sometimes my handwriting has totally changed. And sometimes they would say, I've got memories of being in places. I have memories now of being in Rome, and I've never been to Rome, things like that.
Yeah.
And in every case, when they were connected with the family of the heart donor, they would find out, oh, well, yeah, our daughter, Rome was her favorite city in the world. She went there every chance that she could. And now you have memories of being in Rome, but you say you've never in your life ever visited. Those must be your memories. How weird is that, right? Or, that's our son's handwriting that you have. That's bizarre. And so the heart, really, we know now, has a lot of gray matter and white matter in it. They say there's a little brain in the heart, and it contains the memories of the things that we really love, our true affinities. And so the subconscious mind is the part of us that is so vastly intelligent. I mean, if you think about it for a moment, we take for granted our lives, day to day. We just kind of go from one moment to another and one day to another and live our lives. And here's where we are. And we go through life and we die and we move on. But really, I've come to believe that every single moment of our life it's a miracle, really. We go from one miracle moment to the next miracle moment, because our bodies consist ultimately of pure energy. And if you get down to the quantum level, that's all we are. We're these subatomic particles. They're not really particles at all. When you say particle, it makes them sound like they've got some solidity, but they don't. Everything is really, it's like the light or the wave that Einstein came up with. We're just pure energy. And so if you think about it, what is your body? Well, your body it's an almost unlimited number of these subatomic energies that are all flying in this tight formation, but there's still vast distances between them. But they're giving you that experience that you're having in this world. So, I mean, it's miraculous that we don't just fly apart. Yeah. Why don't our bodies just fly apart? What's holding them together? Well, that's a question for the higher power. But I think that our life is divine. There are divine purposes why we're here. And so life is really miraculous. And so anyway.
Well, what you're talking, go ahead.
No, I was like, do you believe that we came in, like each individual came in with already a preset, somewhat like program in their heart and what we call a life purpose? And
I do. Yeah, I absolutely do.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that I believe that before we come here, we live with God, our Father, the Creator. And I believe that before we come here, we're living in this state of perfect love, perfect abundance. We've got everything that we need. We're learning, we're progressing. We don't have physical bodies, but we have spirits. And I think that if you could take your spirit out of your body, it would look exactly like you. And that's really who you are. And when you die, and people have seen this, I mean, since time out of mind, right? For thousands of years, this has happened where people will sometimes under the right circumstances, they'll see when somebody dies, they see the spirit leave the body. Or people have these experiences where they die and they're outside of their body, right? Looking down on the wreck or whatever it is.
Well documented, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, so that spirit intelligence is really who we are. And if you go to a funeral and you see the person lying there in the casket, it's obvious, something's gone out of them. Did you guys know that back in 1915, they did studies on this where they would take people and right at the moment of death, they would try to have them on a really fine scale.
Yes.
To see if there was remember that? And and they would lose about 21 grams of weight.
There was a movie called 21 Grams, and I think
There was.
Yeah, but
I
it
never
wasn't
saw that.
completely. It wasn't completely about that, but they mentioned that in the movie about they lost the weight of 21 grams.
Really?
Yeah, I think Sean Penn was in it, if I can recall.
That's so
But yeah,
Yeah, I never saw that. I should watch it.
yeah,
Yeah.
seriously.
Put it on my list.
yeah.
Do you reference a lot of like the Heart Math Institute work in your practice and what you're going on, like with what we were just talking with as far as like the heart and like, I correct me if I'm wrong, isn't it like 40,000 some neurons that are actually, you know, similar to the neurons in our brain that we have present in the heart?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Heart Math has done, you know, they've done a lot of really amazing work with coherence and understanding more about the heart and how the heart works. And what I found one day, I had this amazing experience. First of all, when I started figuring out about emotional baggage, that people had emotional energies that were trapped in their bodies, what I found was that no matter how young or old my patients were, they all had this in common, that whether they were dealing with a physical or a mental or emotional problem, there was almost always emotional baggage there. There was an underlying cause. And emotional baggage, I came to understand gradually, was the energy that was left behind after some kind of emotional experience. And normally, you know, when we experience an emotion, there's some stimulus that happens. Somebody says something to us, or we read something, or we see something, or we think something, or whatever. And so we start to feel an emotion. And it's like we go through this, what I call the emotional loop. We start to feel an emotion as we're going through this loop. We start to think the thoughts that come with that. We start to feel the maybe the physical sensations that come along with that. And most of the time, what happens is we kind of acknowledge that emotion, and then we allow it to just naturally dissipate and disappear. And that closes the loop on that emotional experience. And then that experience is done, and we're ready for the next one. But sometimes what happens is an emotion starts to come up for us, and we decide, you know what, I'm not going there. I'm not going to allow myself to feel that emotion. And so that emotional loop gets stopped. And so that emotional energy that is part of that experience now, instead of dissipating and going away naturally, is kind of suspended in the body. And so that's one way we develop a trapped emotion. Another way is if, say, something happens to you and you decide you're starting to feel maybe an emotion of anger or resentment or something else, and you decide that, yeah, you know what, I'm not just going to allow that emotion to I'm not only going to feel a little bit resentful or a little bit angry. By golly, you know, I've been wronged or whatever it is. And you get really upset. We've all done this with all kinds of emotions. When you do that, also that normal little cycle of the emotional loop gets stuck. And so now that energy is suspended in the body. And so the emotion code is really just a way to find these open loops, really, and we do that by finding the energy that's trapped in the body. So a trapped emotion is a ball of energy from about the size of a baseball to about the size of a softball, and they can lodge anywhere in the body. And wherever they lodge, they tend to disrupt, distort the normal energy field of the body in that area. And when that happens, because the body itself is nothing but energy, you are interfering with the function in that area. You know, the chemical reactions, the blood flow, the lymph flow, the flow of acupuncture at meridian energy through that area, all that gets affected, right? So, and because the subconscious mind, see, consciously, we don't know anything. We're barely functional. It's amazing to me that any of us get anything done. Because we're all just so stupid. I mean, we have that brain, that conscious mind it's like a peanut brain. I actually tested this. I'll tell you something. For years, I used to teach people that, because this is what I had heard, right? That we use about 10% of our capability, you know, 10% of the brain or whatever is
Everybody's heard that.
Conscious. Yeah, everybody's heard that. So I taught that for years. And then finally I thought, you know what? No, we're all so stupid. Maybe it's 5.
Yeah.
So then I taught that for quite a few years.
Down to 1%.
And then it was only a few years ago, I was thinking about this and I thought, you know, I've never actually tested this. I've never actually asked the subconscious mind of anybody how much of their intelligence is conscious. And what I found actually kind of blew my mind, because what I found was we use ready for this? 0.00000001% of our intelligence. That's how much of our total intelligence is conscious.
This was in an interaction with like the subconscious using like the ring method or whatnot, or just part of your modalities when you're working with patients?
Yeah, I've tested this with multiple people, and it seems to come out the same every time. And so, when people die and they go to the other side, oftentimes they talk about how their mind expands to this amazing degree, and information just flows in, and it's like this level of consciousness that they've never experienced before. And I think that when we die, we start to get that back. But I think that when we're in this world, in living in these bodies, I think our ability to access all of that intelligence is it's dialed way back for us, so that we're here in this world. It's like we're put here into this world. We're born and we don't know anything, and we immediately start being lied to.
Yeah, from birth.
Santa Claus.
Yep.
Exactly. We start learning all the things we're not capable of, and all the things we can't do, and
what your culture is, what your race is, all that stuff.
Yeah, all these defined.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly.
What you are.
Yeah, exactly right. Because that's what they learned from the people that taught them, and so these false ideas about what we're capable of, come down from centuries and so on. And so mankind is living in this really, really limited state. And it's really, it's interesting. I remember when I was writing the Emotion Code book back in 2006, 2007, it came out in 2007. Actually, this book came out the same, it was a soft cover then, but it came out the same month and year as the iPhone.
Oh yeah, 2007.
Yeah, 2007. I think it was June or July. Anyway, when I was working on the book, I remember there was a guy, and I can't remember his name, but he was a chiropractor back, I think he was in Ohio. And he was having trouble with his foot one day. And he just had this idea to start talking to his foot and telling his foot talking to the bones in his foot and telling the bones to realign. And they did. And he thought, oh my gosh, this is unbelievable. So he developed this method in this practice where he would work on people on the phone and just talk to their bodies and tell things to realign. And they did. So he's building this big practice, and someone filed a complaint. And so they brought him into the chiropractic board, and they stripped him of his license because they said he was insane.
Really?
Right? Well, it wasn't that long ago. Yeah. Well, isn't that interesting? And so now we've certified over 10,000 practitioners now in over 80 countries in the Emotion Code. And they all do this. They all work with other people, all over the world. And in fact, we were my wife and I were in Istanbul last summer, met a young guy named Umer, who has most of his clients are in the US, and he does 10 to 15 sessions a day with people. They pay him in advance, and he does the work and sends them the results by email. And he said, yeah, you guys have totally changed my life.
Yeah, you can imagine.
Seriously,
making US money in Istanbul, which is great.
Yeah, because they don't have that access there. Well, now they do because of computers.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That we're all connected through that.
But I think that's like the work you're studying and obviously brought to the world. When you look at like technology, it's kind of, I've talked to people before, like, hey, we're getting smarter because look at the technology. I'm like, well, the technology really isn't making us smarter. We're actually utilizing it as an awareness to where we are. So you're actually going to the direct technology, which was within us. Because like the iPhone is just an extension of who we are. It's not, people are like, oh, it helps me out. I'm like, it helps you out because you're not utilizing our own internal guidance systems and own Google processor, so to speak. Mm-hmm. But you're teaching us how to go back to that, to where we can step away slowly from the outward technology and go with the inner technology.
Yeah. Beautifully put. That's exactly right. Let me share some stories with you about how powerful this can be. Here's a good one. There was a a woman that came into me who had fibromyalgia, pain all over, and I was able to help her, and she got well. So then she wants her husband to come in to see me. She finally talked him into coming in. And so he finally comes into my office, and here's the story. This guy was a truck driver. 4 years before, he's driving his truck, and he starts getting this uncomfortable feeling in his groin. It's his scrotum, and it's swelling, and it swells up really big, and it's unbelievably painful. And he starts seeing doctors for it, and nobody can figure out what it is. Nobody can figure out what's wrong. And so he has to go on disability, total disability, can't work, can't do anything. And so he's seeing all these specialists. So 2 years into this, they do exploratory surgery, and they open him up, and they don't really see anything. And they stitch him up again, and all the swelling comes back, and it's just miserable. Really nice young guy, about 35 years old, beautiful young wife, couple of really cute kids. But I mean, this guy's life is just, on hold. So 2 more years go by. He finally comes in to see me, and he tells me that every month he's going back to, he goes back up to UCLA Medical Center, and he sees doctors up there. And he also goes down to Scripps La Jolla, their medical center. And so I think that this guy was kind of a medical mystery, really, for them. He was kind of a medical anomaly.
Okay.
Because they couldn't figure out what was wrong with him, and nobody had any idea. So, but I knew how to talk to the subconscious mind. So I started asking some questions. And in the body code, this is the body code book. Yeah. And in the body code book, we have this page where we have the 6 kinds of imbalances that cause all of our problems, right? Mm-hmm. And so tapping into asking his subconscious mind questions. And what I was doing is I had him holding his arm out parallel to the floor. I'm asking questions, and the body will respond back. You see, the subconscious mind is as far as its interface goes, it's a binary computer. So if you ask questions that have a yes answer or a no answer, the body will manifest those through muscle strength for yes, and then slightly weaker muscles for no, right? And so I'm asking, all right, well, is there an underlying reason why you've got this problem? Yes, strong. Okay, is the reason on this side of the chart, on the left side? And that was weak. That was a no. So, okay, is it a pathogen? Yes. So I turned to the pathogen page, and which in the book looks like this. And by the way, in the book, we've got, there are page numbers for all of these images so that you can actually use the book, just like I'm telling you now. And so I'm taking to a page that looks like this, and I go through these one at a time, and it goes strong on parasites right here. And I said, oh, well, your subconscious mind is indicating that you've got some kind of a parasite. And I said, has anybody mentioned that to you, that could be a possibility? And he said, no, nobody's ever mentioned that. In 4 years, right? Nobody's thought of that. It's kind of amazing. But anyway, I said, well, I think that's at least part of what's going on with you. And so I was able to test him a little bit more to find out what kind of a parasite supplement he needed to kill the parasite. So he takes it home, but he's kind of, he's kind of hopeless, really. He's really depressed. And he just, it's just whatever. This guy's out of his mind. His wife made him take the supplement.
That's why we're getting
right. 5 days later, this guy's back in my office. Still to this day, I think he was probably the happiest person I've ever met, because within 5 days, it all just disappeared.
Yeah, if my balls were swollen, they shrunk. I feel good too.
Yeah.
Wow.
So that you bring up that was a great. I've never heard this example. This is great. So even when somebody's not buying in per se, you can still release this emotional block for them then, huh?
Well, in his case, it wasn't so much.
Had to buy in. You know what I mean? I thought belief was very important from the participating party.
Well, belief is important, but in his case, he didn't believe it, but his wife made him take these supplements that actually killed this parasite that he had.
Mm-hmm.
That was getting probably into the lymph channels and blocking the flow of lymph. So, but there's definitely a belief component.
He had to have something to come to you.
Yeah,
that's to some degree, right?
Yeah, exactly right. I mean, but even then, most of the people that I saw, especially during the last 10 years that I was in practice, had been told that there was really no hope for them in Western medicine at all.
Yeah.
And oftentimes they would be told, there's no cure for what you have. Well, when a medical doctor tells you that there's no cure for you, what's he really saying? What he's really saying is that there's no drug that we've ever come up with that will cure this condition. There's no surgery we can do that will fix you. Therefore, what you have is incurable. Well, what about all the other healing modalities that have been around, for thousands of years? What if you try one of those? So Western medicine has that fault sometimes. And sometimes people would come into me and they had been told that, if anyone ever tells you that you can get well from this, they're lying to you. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, sometimes those people, I would have to screen people sometimes, because if a person really truly believed that there was no way they were going to get well, then
That's
no matter what I did, they wouldn't get well. But luckily that was only a couple people in all those years. It's a really interesting thing. Belief is so powerful. If you believe you're going to die, you're probably going to die. The famous story about that is this woman who wasn't feeling well, goes in the hospital, they run all these tests, and the doctor comes back and says, well, we're so sorry, but you've got this incurable problem and there's nothing we can really do. And so you probably got about 6 months and you should get your affairs in order. I'm so sorry. So about 6 months to the day, she dies. And then later they found out in the hospital, they were doing a records review and found out that her test results actually had been mixed up with someone else's. Her test results were negative.
Yeah.
Did her belief kill her? I think it did.
Yeah.
But I think that's why your work's so powerful, because you're not just writing about it, you have example after example, because we all acquire our beliefs from actually seeing things happen. People say,
Right.
seeing is believing or believing is seeing. Either way, like a lot of people, we come to a belief that we can fly in an airplane, but 300 years ago, that wasn't a common belief. So the work you're doing is you're actually opening up to this belief that we can actually get rid of these emotions that are creating the disease. They're not, like you said, they're not curing it, but the body itself cures itself if everything's running in its nice natural path. And you're helping people remove that item that's actually blocking it or resisting the energy to continue where the body would naturally be in homeostasis and heal.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, I look at the body as a divine creation that has the ability to heal itself. And I mean, if you think about it, we all recognize that to some degree. If you cut your finger, it's going to heal. If you put a Band-Aid on it, you might think that the Band-Aid's healing it, but it's not the Band-Aid, right? It's your body itself. And the body knows how to heal itself. And so the body code and the emotion code are just ways of finding and removing things that are in the way of the body's ability to heal. Or sometimes it's about giving the body back something that it needs to be able to heal. One of my favorite stories about how powerful this can be is this young woman, mid-20s, came in to see me one day. She's been hospitalized for 5 days with this pain in her abdomen, right lower abdomen. And they ran every test that they could in the hospital for 5 days, but all the tests were negative. And so finally they just said, you know what? We can't help you. You need to go. And so she comes in to see me and I'm testing her. Her pain's about a 9 on a 0 to 10 scale. And so I broke out the body code, which back then consisted of a computer that was right by where I was working. And it was just a mind mapping system. It had these 6 categories. And the 6 categories are things like pathogens, like we mentioned, misalignments, toxins, nutritional issues, lifestyle problems, the circuitry and systems of the body, and energies like trapped emotions. And so I broke this out, the system, and I said, okay, let's see if there's something we can find. I found a couple of trapped emotions, found a couple of other things, and just fixed whatever I could find as I was going along. And one of the things that I found at a certain point, I was taken to the nutritional area to this chart and that I had set up. And I was taken to column A and, row B or whatever, row 2, and found chromium. I said, oh, okay. I said, I think your body needs chromium. But, chromium is great for blood sugar and stuff. And I thought it was just an incidental finding because obviously that's not a big problem. It's not, not what's going on.
Mhm.
It's not an underlying cause of her pain in her abdomen. That's got to be something else,
And
right?
what is chromium for listeners? Just
Yeah,
briefly.
chromium is just, it's just an element that the body uses, and it uses it for various different things. And some of those things we don't know about, as you'll find out here in a moment. But it's good for blood sugar and helping to stabilize blood sugar and so on. So we used to carry it as a supplement in my office, but at the time we were out of it. And I said, you probably should get some at some point. Your subconscious is telling me this is something you need. I thought it was just an incidental thing.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, so the next day she comes in. She's my first patient the next day. And now she's like a 10 plus in pain, and she's really hurting. And I remember thinking, I don't know how they missed this. It's got to be appendicitis. It's right down in her right lower abdomen. I can't believe they missed this. And I didn't know what else to do, but she was right there with me. So I thought, okay, well, let's just see if we can find anything. So go back into the mind map system, which her subconscious mind was able to connect and guide me once again. And out of all the thousands of possibilities, I was taken to this nutritional chart, column A, row 2, whatever, right down to chromium. And it was only at that moment that I remembered, wait a minute, that showed up yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, you know what? I said, I don't know why, but your subconscious mind, I think, is really trying to tell us that you need chromium. I have no idea why, but I want you to leave my office right now, go down the street to the health food store, buy some chromium tablets and ask them for water and take some right then. Don't even wait, and then come back. Okay. 20 minutes later, guys, this young, very athletic woman is literally jumping up and down in my waiting room. And she's saying, I'm fixed. I'm fixed. She's
oh my God.
And so the chromium worked that quickly on her. Yeah. Wow.
She said the instant that she took the chromium, the pain was gone.
Yeah.
And she said, how did that work? And I said, I have no idea.
Yeah.
Well, let me ask you this, doctor. So we've got these documented experiences such as this, and many, many before this. And there's other great doctors also out there with similar, results, if you will, whether it's different modalities, whatnot. How do we get this to catch on in the sense of, like, how do we get health insurance to start being able to accept this stuff? How do we break that barrier? Is it something like that you personally, are you out there talking to different, associations or whatnot? Like, how do we kind of get people to catch on and expose this into we have evidence. To deny this type of stuff, it just seems so crazy to me.
Yeah, well, it's just a matter of time, and it's also a matter of consciousness. Yeah. As we get more doctors, there's research going on right now using the body code, for example, with children who are traumatized, who develop a personality dissociation disorder, where their personality splits into multiple personalities. Normally, this is very, very specialized work that psychologists perform. And it takes typically a couple of years with a child to reintegrate all of those different personalities back into one personality for the rest of their life. And we now have very strong evidence in case studies that with the body code, they're able to do that in a couple of months instead of 2 years. Yeah. So that's research that's ongoing. The thing is, the body code, what's exciting about this, and the book, of course, just came out, but what it really is it's a way that anyone really can access the subconscious and find out if they've got a nutritional deficiency of some kind, or if they've got some kind of a toxin. Maybe their migraines are in part because of the mercury fillings they had as a kid, or maybe they got some root canals that need to be removed or whatever. Maybe they've got misalignments of something, trapped emotions, pathogens. That's really the shift here. The shift that's taking place is that every single person, I think, that is born into this world has a birthright, and that birthright is to be able to heal, to be able to know what's really going on in their body, to be able to get information, to ask questions and get answers and know what's really happening, what their real imbalances are. And to also do the same thing for other people. And so this whole movement with the emotion code and the body code, the reason why this is exploding worldwide is because it's expanding people's consciousness almost immediately. And they're realizing, oh my gosh, the answers all lie within me. And then the answers are also within the people around me. And guess what? I've been doing this, and grandpa's back pain is gone, and Susie's not depressed. And, you know, Shirley's pregnant finally after trying for years and years. And do you know what I mean? So that's what's driving this. Is it's really a grassroots movement that's taking place where people are taking back their power that somehow mankind gave up, you know, for the most part, a long, long time ago.
Because I believe once we take our power back, we won't need health insurance because to some degree, because insurance is like betting on that you're going to get sick. You know, really, it's why you pay for it. So it's
right.
But
I think,
yeah.
I think having the kind of insurance that, you know, like a high deductible kind of insurance, probably like what I have, you know, if I have an accident or something and I have to be in the hospital, hey, I'm all for that. You know, if I'm racing the train and I don't make it and my leg now is over there, take me to the hospital.
You often race trains?
Not anymore.
Yeah. Okay. Now, for those listeners right now that are new to this emotional code and body code, can you go over some of the actual modalities and how you do this, how you perform this? Because, like, I remember listening to you talking about this when I first heard about you, and it's like sounded great. But then when you started actually doing it, I'm like, wow, okay, this is where the belief started coming in rather than the intellectual understanding of it. It started really coming home to me about how you do the you know, different type of modality.
Sure. Well, it's definitely different from Western medicine or what most of us are used to. But the reality of it is, you see, because I was a computer programmer for all those years, as I worked with the body over many years, I started to understand how the body is also a computer, but it's not like a computer like your phone or like your desktop or your laptop. It's very different. It is a very different kind of interface. And that interface consists of asking questions and getting answers from the subconscious mind, usually through muscle testing. And so for example, let me share a story with you. It'll kind of help illustrate. I was at an event once and gave this talk. At the beginning of this event, I had happened to be at the door greeting people as they were coming in. And I met this young woman that showed up, and her mother came with her. Well, later I asked for a volunteer, and I was going to show people how it works to get rid of a trapped emotion. So this young girl comes up out of the audience, and so I asked her if she had any particular issues, and she said she didn't. And I said, okay, well, hold out your arm. So she holds her arm out parallel to the floor, right? And so I started asking questions. Now, these questions, I'm getting answers from her subconscious mind, because it's an involuntary response when you're strong or you're weak if you're getting answers like this. So I asked, do you have a trapped emotion that we can release? And I got a yes answer. It was strong. And so then I have, there's a chart of emotions that looks kind of like this in the back of the body code book. And there's 60 emotions in the charts divided into 2 columns and 6 rows. And so I asked, okay, is this in column A? No. It's in column B. Is it in one of the odd rows? It was in maybe an even row. I don't remember exactly, but I narrowed it down to 5 emotions and then started asking about those emotions. And the emotion that went strong was forlorn. So I asked, okay, do we need to know anything else about this? Because sometimes the subconscious mind will want us to dig a little deeper before it will allow something like this to be released. And the answer was yes. So I traced it back. Did it occur earlier than age 10? She was about 21 or 22. Yes. Did it occur earlier than 5? Yes. It happened that this had occurred, something emotional had happened to her in the first year of her life. And I thought, okay, well, she's not going to remember this. And I asked her, I said, do you remember anything that might have created this? And she said, no. And I happened to look out of the audience, and there's her mother, and she's as white as a sheet. She's like got her hands up over her mouth and nose. And I said, hey, do you know what this might be about? And she said, she was really embarrassed, but she said she thought she knew maybe. She said that back in those days, she used to use cloth diapers. Okay. And one day she accidentally pinned her daughter to her diaper with a safety pin. And she didn't know it until she changed her the next time. And she was just horrified to find this out. Well, So here's this poor baby that's got this safety pin through her flesh,
Oh,
and she's in so much pain, and she's crying and crying, no doubt, and no one's helping her. No one's realizing. Her mom must have been really overwhelmed, you know. And anyway, so the feeling that is overwhelming to her right then is this feeling of being forlorn, which is all alone and hopeless and desolate. And that emotional energy became trapped in her body because it was so powerful. Sure enough, that was it. And so I released that by just swiping a few times down the middle of the back. I probably used a magnet. You can use a magnet or just your hand. We're going down the governing meridian, which is a little river of energy down the back. And that released that trapped emotion. So she goes back and sits down, and I kind of forgot about it. I finished the lecture and went home. 10 days later, I get an email. It's from this girl's mother. And she said, listen, she said, my daughter has had this problem with her hip and her knee on, I think it was on the right side, for about 8 years. And she said, it's been gradually, slowly affecting the way that she walks, but she just lives with it. And she said, we've taken her to different people to try to fix this, but nobody's ever been able to fix it. But she said, the moment you release that trapped emotion of forlorn from her, the pain in her hip and in her knee it's just gone, completely gone. And she said, not only that, but she feels this new lightness of being that she's never felt before. And she's telling everybody about this. And she said, I waited 10 days because I wanted to make sure that this wasn't just some kind of a fluke. But she said, you know what? She said, it's gone. She said, I just wanted you to know the result of what you did, right? So this points out a couple of interesting things. One thing is that the subconscious mind, her subconscious knew about this emotional baggage. It knew about this experience. Consciously, she had no memory of it, but her subconscious knew. And so that's really cool. And also the reality that 90% of the pain that we have is because of emotional baggage like this. And it can be things we don't even remember. It can be from emotional baggage that we inherit at conception from mom or dad that might go back for 10 or 20 generations. And we can find with the emotion code, the body code, we find things like that. We release those very easily. And it's so interesting because, you know, I mean, I've worked with people who couldn't find love because at least part of the reason was maybe, you know, their 8th great grandmother got jilted at the altar. Mm-hmm. I've worked with people who couldn't make money because, you know, great great grandpa was thrown into the poorhouse, you know, things like that. And so that energy passes down. So we're not only the manifestation of our own stuff, but also our ancestor stuff. And that's a whole nother show.
It is. And I love where you're getting at with this, Doctor, because this is what we don't realize. And we're banging our heads over and over each and every day. Oh, I'm this, I'm not good enough, I'm not that. And we don't even think that, you know, it could be things from before our earliest memory, you know, at 1 year old, or generational traumas that have been passed down, et cetera. And it's so important to open people's eyes to this. Like, hey, if something's coming up, it's trying to tell you something. This is a sign for us to, you know, what there's more here. And so that's why I love your work. Is it's giving people their power back. Hey, look, there's something here that, you know.
Now, how did you fall upon like digging into this, like as far as especially going against a prime meridian and all that stuff? Like when did you wake up one day and say, let me try this and let me dig into this? Like, how did you go down that rabbit hole, so to speak, and come out the other side with this kit?
Well, you know, when I was in practice, I was obsessed with getting to the underlying causes of my patients' problems. And I thought that was my job, right? I want to really fix people. And it used to kind of drive me crazy sometimes when I couldn't fix a person. And so being kind of OCD, not as much now as I was back then, I was just trying to figure it out, you know, what's going on. And I'll tell you something, the greatest weapon that I had, the greatest asset that I had, the thing that was on my side that helped more than anything else, I think really was prayer. What happened was, see, it was an answer to prayer for me to go into the healing arts. And I've had some really powerful experiences in my life, spiritual experiences that have taught me that God is real. He loves us. He lives. And love is the whole reason why we're here. We're here to learn how to love and so on. And anyway, so I figured, okay, when I got into practice, God's gotten me into this. Maybe he'll help me. And so I developed this habit. And the habit was, and by the way, this is a totally personal, totally private habit. No one ever knew that I was actually taking a moment and saying a prayer for them. But it was just a really simple thing. I would just say, Father in heaven, please help me to help this person. in the name of Jesus Christ. As a Christian, I would pray that way. And it took that long. And it was just a momentary pause. But I'll tell you something, there were times during those years when I would offer that silent prayer for help on behalf of somebody that maybe knew that I didn't know how to approach. I didn't know what to do, with this. This is really a crazy problem. I don't know what to do. I don't know how to help this person. And in response, information would just flood in like an avalanche. Now that didn't happen very often. I mean, out of all those, a couple of decades of work, that happened. I can count the times on one hand, but that taught me that, that higher power is aware of what's going on. And sometimes the information that would flood in would be a totally different way of looking at things, right? Mm-hmm. Things, ways to look at things that I'd never even thought of. And that nobody else had ever thought of either. I can tell you one of those if we've got time, or we might be getting close.
Yeah, we got all day.
We're doing. Yeah,
we're doing. Okay.
No problem.
We love talking with you.
Okay. Well, our youngest daughter, Lizzie, is 23. And is that right? 23, I guess. Anyway, when my wife was pregnant with her, she was really suffering with morning sickness. And she was kind of begging me to help her. You got to help me figure this out. I need help. And it's a miserable kind of a condition. And so I'm thinking about, other morning sick patients that I had and things that I'd recommended for them. And I, realizing that none of those things really worked very well. Eating ginger and wearing the acupuncture wristband thing. None of those things really worked very well. So I said this prayer and I said, Father, if there's a better way to understand this, help me to know about it, because nothing really works for this very well. And boom, I get this answer that flows in, and it was almost whimsical. The answer was, well, you'd feel pretty sick too, especially if you had this new life growing inside of you and your brain wasn't fully connected to it. That was the answer. And I thought, so it's a connection problem? And so what I did is I started muscle testing my wife and asking, okay, is your brain fully connected to the fetus? No. And I found that I had to break it into 4 parts: the fetus, the amniotic fluid, the placenta, and the umbilical. And when I was able to reconnect those parts, and I would find a disconnection, and then I would just swipe on her governing meridian a few times with a magnet or my hand to make the reconnection, right? And the moment, her mouth is watering, right? The back of her throat, she's ready to throw up. And the moment that last connection was made, all of a sudden just melted away. And I thought, that's unbelievable. Well, she goes a couple more days and it starts coming back a little bit. So I rechecked her and I found you have to check the connections in both directions. The brain has to connect with the parts of this new life, but all those different parts have to connect to the brain. So it was a two-way thing, right? Like a full duplex kind of communication. And so anyway, I found a disconnection, corrected it. And then a couple days later, it started coming back a little, found another one, connected it, and that was it. No more trouble. Now we have practitioners who just specialize in this, in working with nausea, and especially morning sickness. Think about that. Because how many women are so miserable for months, sometimes through a whole pregnancy. Yeah. And so anyway, that taught me about connection. And so then that led to other things where I found that sometimes the spirit within us, sometimes due to trauma, physical trauma or emotional trauma, will sometimes get knocked ajar and kind of can be out of the body a ways. And figured out how to get that spirit back into the body. This is like the most basic stuff, but it's really like the science of God. I mean, it's science that is at a level that we haven't even started to look at yet, because it's so far beyond our capabilities. But we've seen amazing things happen just by reconnecting things with the spirit and the body. And I mean, so there's stuff like that in the body code that you're not going to find anywhere else, because because that's where it came from. Was some of that came in response to prayer. And so really, I tell people I just work here. This work is really from above, and I'm just the guy that got chosen to sort of put it together. But yeah, it's incredibly empowering for people.
Yeah, I should.
Well, I was going to ask him, how would you explain the difference between the body code and the emotion code?
Well, the emotion
Do
code
they
is
work in
about,
tandem?
yeah, the emotion code is about one thing, and that's about finding and removing your emotional baggage. It's about finding and removing the emotional baggage that can be anywhere in the body, but also about that baggage that's been built up around your heart, creating what we call a heart wall, and interfering with your ability to give love and receive love, and create your the perfect blueprint that's within your heart, I believe, for your life. The body code, on the other hand, is it includes the emotion code. Not the book, but we teach the basics of the emotion code method in here in the body code, because the emotion code is in this area of energies. The body code is everything else. It's the pathogens, it's the toxins, it's the circuitry, the systems of the body. It's how to find and correct misalignments of various things, because typically those are because of other things going on, and how to find nutritional imbalances and things. So I'll tell you a story. When I first wrote the body code, the first manuscript that I sent in to our publisher, Joel Fatinos at St. Martin's Press, they read it and they got back to us, and Joel said, really what we want a how-to book, because the first version of the body code was really kind of an overview, teaching people, here's what the body code is, here's how it works, here's some stories. And he said, no, we want more of a how-to book. And I thought, well, how are we going to do that? Because see, the body code itself, back in the early days, it was a mind map. Now it's software that runs on your phone and on tablets and computers and things. But I thought, how are we going to do that? Because if I print out everything that's in the body code in a digital format, the book's going to be about this thick, and nobody's going to want to read a book that thick. So I thought about it, and then I realized, well, what I could do is I could kind of take the more common things that we find, the more common kinds of imbalances that we find with people, and put those into the body code. And so, so people will be able to use this. They can use the book to find imbalances. If they want access to everything that's in the body code, then they can download the app. It's a subscription app. It's not expensive. And yeah, so it took a lot of work to get it done, but I'm grateful it's done really well. I mean, it's not there now, but it got to number 81 on Amazon top 100. Wow. So that was pretty good. That's awesome. It's been number 1 on energy healing and some different categories, for a while. So
congratulations.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I know on your website you have, online courses for people can be practitioners in the energy code and even the body code. So, would you suggest they start with the energy code, and then
the emotion code?
Yeah, the emotion code.
Yeah. Well, it kind of depends. I mean, the books do go together, but I think that they really do stand alone also. Yeah. In the emotion code, of course, we go into a lot more detail about just finding and removing trapped emotions. And we have 2 levels of certification right now for people who want to become certified. And we set up the certification programs initially for people who wanted to do this for a living and charge other people, because we thought, okay, this is all trademark copyrighted material. So, we kind of reserve the right to vet people, make sure that they're not out of their minds.
That's a good
and
idea.
so that's how it started. Right. But what we find now is that about 1/3 of the people that go through our certification programs, because they're not expensive, they just want to have rails to run on so they can really learn this stuff and really master it. Gotcha. But then for a lot of them, it turns into a career. But we have emotion code certification that we offer first, and the information about that is at discoverhealing.com. Okay. And that's our level 1 certification. It's a 6-month program. It's all done online, and you can do it at your own speed. I mean, the record, I think we had someone went through both level 1 emotion code certification and level 2 body code certification, and they did each one in 9 days, which is really fast. But you can do it as fast as you want. Yeah. Right. And
a little bit about your experience too, Frank.
Oh yeah, sorry? I did your 7-module course, the 7 modules you did, and it was basically based on the emotion code, and then you finished up on the 7th module, getting into the body code, which I thought was fascinating, because you did demonstrations with people that had pains and stuff like that, and even one woman had a cat.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the cat was
Yeah.
cat was not going to the bathroom in the litter box, and
That's so funny. But why wouldn't it
Dr.
work?
Bradley, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So it was interesting. So yeah, because you talk about that too. Another thing I liked about, I don't know if it was the first animal, but horses or animals themselves.
No.
This doesn't pertain to human beings.
No.
Yeah. And tell us a little about that.
Sure, it works great with animals. In fact, we've got we have a whole chapter on the emotion code being used with animals in the emotion code book, and we've got a chapter on animals in the body code book as well, because really they have a subconscious mind too.
Mm-hmm.
And what I found was that about 80 or 90% of their problems, whether they're physical or mental or emotional, whether they're having like a behavioral problem, like your cat's peeing in your shoes or something, or your dog keeps humping people's legs when they come over to visit you, whatever it is. These are things we fixed, right?
Yeah.
And it's actually really easy, because usually it's emotional baggage with animals, but you can use the body code with animals too, because it's so crazy. But the subconscious mind of an animal knows exactly what's going on with it too. And so there's no difference really. If I tell people, if you learn how to do the emotion code with people, you're already an animal whisperer, because you know how to do it with animals. It's the same process. The only thing that's different is you can't ask them to hold out a paw or something and resist your pressure, because that would take lots of training.
But your subconscious can connect with their subconscious, and you can, go from there, correct?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. Which is fascinating.
It's really amazing. I remember, well, I grew up in Montana, and we had a ranch for a while. I had a horse, the whole time I was growing up, and I never thought of animals as having emotions like most people, I think. I just learned that, if you kick the horse, it goes fast, kick it twice, it goes twice as fast, right? And so it was really interesting. There was a patient of mine that had asthma, and she happened to be a horse trainer, and I was able to help her get well from her asthma. And so one day she called me up and she said, "Listen, I've got this horse that has a problem, and would you come look at it?" She said, this horse is urinating in its stall all the time. And she said, "I've had the vets come look at it and they can't find anything wrong with the horse. Would you come look at it?" And I just thought, well, I don't know, a horse. We've never worked on a horse before, but I thought, all right, kind of as a favor to her. Mm-hmm. So I brought my wife with me. And so if you can imagine how this works, we figured out that my wife could touch the horse with one hand and hold out one arm. And then I could talk to the horse, and my wife's arm would stay strong for yes answers, and it would go weak for no answers coming out of the horse's subconscious. So I thought, okay, this works just like with people. That's cool. So I started asking some questions and found an imbalance in the horse's kidneys. And so made a correction to the horse's kidneys. And it was like turning on a switch kind of. And the switch stayed on for maybe like 30 seconds, and then it blew out again. And at that point, I thought, okay, I don't know what to do next. Well, with people, if that happened, I would immediately suspect, oh, there's some emotional baggage there we got to find and remove to get this circuit to stay turned on, right? But this is a horse. And so I don't know what to do. And my wife looks at me and she says, "Well, why don't you check and see if it's emotional?" And I actually laughed at her. I thought she was joking. I said, "Oh, that's really funny." And then she kind of glared.
She's like, "No, what are you talking about?"
Yeah. She kind of glares at me and says, "Just check." And I thought, oh, she's serious.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I checked, and it was that this horse had a problem with this other horse in the stall, and the owner was there. And she said, "Yeah," she said, "we have to keep those two apart. They hate each other." So we released the trapped emotion, and that was it. The stall dried up, and no more trouble. So I used to get called periodically to go down and work on horses that were having trouble. Yeah. And can I tell you one more story?
Yeah,
please,
absolutely.
please.
Yeah.
So anyway, this horse was having a problem with his hindquarters, wasn't walking correctly. And so they weren't able to use the horse anymore. And they had a vet come and look at it, and there wasn't anything obviously wrong. It just wasn't walking right. And so it was kind of a mystery. So they called me up. So I come down to look at this horse. And by then, word immediately would spread. Oh, this crazy doctor's going to come and talk to the horse, right? Come check this out. So I'd get a crowd of people standing around. And so, so I got a person standing there touching the horse, holding out their arm, and I'm asking questions. Is your name Ranger? Yes. Do you have a trapped emotion that's contributing to this problem? Yes. And going through the emotion code chart, found that this horse had a trapped emotion of sadness. And we just ask, is it in column A, column B? And the subconscious mind of the horse is tied into universal intelligence, and it knows exactly what emotion it is. It's amazing how this works. And so the emotion that came back was sorrow. Okay. Sorrow. So I said, okay, well, was this sorrow about another horse? No. Was it sorrow about a human? No. Was it about a dog? No. A cat? No. I'm kind of running out of ideas. And this bird flies overhead. I thought, well, all right. Was it sadness about a bird? Yes. Rock solid. And I actually burst out laughing. And so did all the people standing around because, okay, right?
Yeah.
This horse says sorrow about a bird. Okay. Ridiculous.
Yeah.
But the horse's owner was there. She said, wait a minute. She said, you know what? Let me tell you something. Last week, right in front of my horse's stall, a baby bird fell out of its nest and fell onto the little roadway and died. And so her horse is in the stall and powerless to help. And here's this baby bird now struggling for its life on the ground. No way this bird's ever going to live. And it struggled for its life, and it probably got run over, and who knows, died. And the horse, I checked to see, okay, is that what this is about? Absolutely. Yes. Sorrow. And that was the emotion that overwhelmed the horse as it was witnessing this. See, there's a whole world of stuff going on around us that we're not even aware of with animals. And so sure enough, that was the emotion. So I just took a magnet and started between the ears and then went down to the tail. I did that a few times to release the trapped emotion. They took the horse out and walked it, and it was perfect. Right. Yeah. So that's how this works.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this, Dr. Bradley. So with this practice, so I've heard you say in the past that our subconscious likes to please us. When you're working on a patient or working with somebody, do you ask these questions out loud verbally so they can audibly hear it? I know that you don't need to, and you can simply ask the question and test it yourself. How do you like to work? And then can you also tell us a little bit on how we can learn to trust ourselves in this practice, if we're performing it on someone or on ourselves, et cetera, how we know, okay, this is not my subconscious pleasing myself, if you will.
Yeah, sure. Well, that's true. The subconscious mind is it's a computer, but it's also kind of like a puppy in the sense that the subconscious will want to please you. And muscle testing to get answers from the subconscious mind has, in some circles, has kind of gotten a bad rap because sometimes people will get wrong answers. And sometimes people, if you expect an answer to come out a certain way, then more likely than not, the answer will come out that way. So it's really important to kind of be really open to whatever the answer might be. And I'll tell you, I learned a really powerful lesson about this. My wife and I have 8 kids total. She and I had 7, and she had one that is again connected to us that my wife gave up for adoption 5 years before I met her.
Okay.
And we're actually in the process of adopting her now because her adoptive parents have passed away, but that's a whole nother story. But anyway, what happened was we had twin boys. We had 2 girls and we had twin boys. And about 3 years into this, my wife is just absolutely overwhelmed. And one day she's thinking about this and she actually says out loud, she's just alone, but she says out loud herself, that's it, I'm not having any more kids. And all of a sudden, in her mind's eye, she sees this little girl with dark hair. And this little girl is saying, oh my gosh, you mean you're not going to have me? And my wife was just blown away and said, well, okay, yeah, of course we'll have you. And so, so there was this other child that was supposed to come apparently. And so anyway, a while later, she got pregnant. And so when I was in practice, I used to have women come in to see me sometimes for me to test to see what pregnancy their baby, or sorry, what sex their baby was going to be, right? And I found that after the first trimester, I could get pretty good answers. And so I never charged women to do this. They would just come in and I would just test them. Is it going to be a boy or is it going to be a girl? All right, looks like it's going to be a boy. I didn't care. I didn't have any interest either way. And I was about 98% accurate, right? Which is at least as good as ultrasound, I thought. And so anyway, so now it's my wife, and we're thinking, okay, it's this little girl. That's really great. We're going to make room for her, no problem. So after about the third trimester, I started testing my wife, and I would just ask questions periodically. Are you pregnant? Yes. Is it going to be a girl? Yes. Okay, great. All the way through the pregnancy, it's going to be a girl. Yes. So, I had some names picked out and so on. Anyway, so my wife has the baby at home, and I'm there, and there's a midwife there, and I'm counting the baby's fingers and toes, like you do to make sure that they're all there and everything looks normal. And she had her legs crossed, and I thought, I better uncross her legs, make sure everything looks normal. So I uncrossed her legs, and it turns out this was not Lizzie, this was Joseph. And I thought, what the heck?
Yeah.
How did that happen? We've been had. And so I realized from that, that, we wanted the girl to come. We had to get Joseph, and then we had to get Ian before we finally got Lizzie, right?
Oh, wow. But Lizzie spoke up early on.
Yep.
She was the first one to speak up.
Yeah. It took 10 years finally to get her.
Yeah. Wow.
But the reason I tell that story is because, even as good at muscle testing as I was, because I had this expectation, we want this to be the girl. We're so excited about the girl. It's almost like my wife's subconscious mind, even though it knew it was a girl, it was almost like it was saying, well, even though it knew it was a boy, it was almost like it was saying, well, they want the girl so bad. Let's just give him that answer for now. Okay. Because that's what they really want.
Yeah.
And so that's something about muscle testing that you have to be a little bit careful of. You have to be really open to anything. And I tell people, the dumber you are, the better this works, because especially with the body code, because if you're highly educated, sometimes it can be harder to set aside all your preconceived ideas about what something might be from. And the best way to get good at this really is to just practice it. All the instructions are in the emotion code. The instructions they're in both of these books, how to do it. You can learn how to do it from the books. And you can start practicing on your friends and see what happens. And that's typically, that's how it goes. That's what's driven the success of this all over the world for so many years. I mean, 99.999%, I think, of all the books that are written are dead on arrival, is what they told us when we self-published the emotion code. And it just keeps going and going and going. And that's because it works.
Yeah, because you mentioned you released this back in 2007. And did you re-release it later on when Tony?
We did.
Yeah.
We signed up. Well, I tried to find a publisher in 2007 and nobody was interested. And then in about 2018, the major publishers basically got into a bidding war to see who was going to publish it. And we decided to go with St. Martin's Press, and they've been fabulous.
Nice.
And so we reprinted it as a hardcover book in, that's the body code.
Yeah.
We reprinted the emotion code in 2019 as a hardcover.
Mm-hmm.
And, by then we were able to get a beautiful forward from Tony Robbins and a lot of really great endorsements from a lot of.
You had a lot of really good endorsements in that. Yeah. Joe Dispenza,
Bruce Lipton.
I don't know if it was,
no, we didn't get one from Bruce, but we did get Joe Dispenza, Greg Braden.
Braden.
Some other some of my favorite people in the world. We're so nice.
Norrie. And George Norrie forwarded the body code, right?
He did the forward for the body code. Yeah. I love George.
He's a good guy.
Yeah.
I've been on his show multiple times at Gaia. Yep. And then and twice now on Coast to Coast, just recently. A few weeks ago. Really fun. He's amazing.
Yeah.
That's cool seeing how you jumping on that. I didn't know George was, so he still does the broadcast
to Coast.
Oh yeah, Coast to Coast, you bet.
Yeah, because I like watching him on Gaia. Gaia has been a great network, and we always encourage the audience, get on there. Just let it opens you up to so much information, and that's what's going on.
Yeah, that is going on. It's going on all over the world, and I'm so grateful really for the technology. The internet that is enabling people to learn about reality instead of just kind of being stuck where
Yeah.
people have been for so long.
Yeah, we can
Stuck.
bypass some of the old institutions that only
Right.
divulge information. Now we can bypass through those, and that's what's happening right now, which is nice because I
Yeah.
would have learned half of this stuff, you know.
Yeah. What a time. This
Yeah.
is a crazy time to be alive. Very exciting.
It
Yep.
is exciting seeing that.
All right.
So what's kind of next for you, Dr. Miley? What are you working on at this moment? And are you actively taking clients? Like like a listener on this show, could they reach out to you for a session or something like that? How does that kind of work?
No, I actually had to retire from my own distance practice. What happened was when I was writing the emotion code book, I got to the part about making a decision if I was going to teach people how this works at a distance. And I thought, man, I don't know if people are ready for that. And this is back in 2006.
Okay.
Are people ready for this? I don't know. And I prayed about it, and I just got this feeling like, yep, put that in there. And so I did. And then that I kind of inadvertently created a distance practice for myself. And I'll tell you what happened. I was people would call me, and I would work on them. And so I set aside 8 a.m. to noon, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday for these people that were calling me from different places in the world and wanting me to work on them. And so, and then we had to go on vacation. And I thought, how am I going to do this? Because I've got all these people lined up that are going to be calling me. And so I got a Skype number. And so I forwarded my office line to my Skype number, and we went to Montana. And I'll never forget this. I'm sitting out, it's 8 o'clock in the morning on Monday. I'm sitting out in the backyard of this cabin in this beautiful little meadow. And someone calls my office line, my first appointment, from, I don't know where, Hong Kong or somewhere. And the phone rings on my computer, and I got my headphones on. I answer the phone, totally transparent, to the client. And I'm sitting there, and I start working with my clients, 20-minute sessions I was doing. And about halfway through the morning, this deer walks into the meadow and stops and looks at me. And I'm talking to somebody on the other side of the planet, and I just have this feeling like, this is unbelievable.
Yeah.
People need to know how to do this, because gee, anybody can do this. This is really amazing. And so now we've achieved that. We've got all these people, thousands and thousands of people doing the same thing.
Yeah. Yeah, because probably physicians that have to go into an office every day, think about their stress level. How good are they at helping out patients when they're at that level of stress? They're probably passing it on. Where you're looking at a deer in a meadow when you're like curing or helping someone remove. That's like, what do you you like drinking a Mai Tai or something.
Yeah, it's so amazing. We have certified practitioners that travel. Actually, my daughter Natalie did that for a number of years. She traveled all over Europe. She would work with her clients in the morning, and then she'd take the afternoons and go explore. And she lived in Brussels, and she'd move to Berlin and be there for 3 months, then move to Croatia. And she traveled all over and lived in a lot of different places, and took her business with her, totally mobile, and got phenomenal results. Just
how can one of our listeners locate one of these, trained and certified specialists?
Our main website is at discoverhealing.com. Discoverhealing.com. And there's a map there. There's a map of the world, and you can find a practitioner on there. And again, the beauty of this is that you don't have to find somebody in your own town. That was then. Okay. It's the 21st century now. You can find somebody that can work with you and actually get results with you using quantum physics. And you might find that the person you really like to work with, maybe they're in London, or maybe they're in Singapore. Who knows? But they're listed there, so you can find somebody.
That's great. And then what are you working on now?
Well, we're actually working on our level 3 certification program, and it's going to be called the Belief Code. Okay. So we have emotion code, we have body code, and then belief code is the next one up. And the belief code is all about finding and removing the subconscious belief systems that we all develop. Sometimes those can start as a child, and that can block us from really being able to create the life we want. And
Is that belief
Very powerful.
you're talking about right now? Would that be? Could we compare that to like a neural pathway?
Well, I think that I think in some ways, yes. Although what we find and what we find is that these a belief in the subconscious mind, okay, is it can be thought of as being a discrete energy pattern in the subconscious, in the energy field of the body. And so they're different than conscious beliefs. I mean, for example, if you have a conscious belief about the sky being blue, I'm not going to change that. If you consciously believe something, that's something that you have to consciously change. But the subconscious beliefs are the ones that that tend to create so much trouble in our lives because they're subconscious, and so they're below the level of consciousness, and so we're not aware of them, and yet they are a large part of how our lives manifest. In other words, if you think about it this way, imagine, and remember, we talked about what a tiny part of our intelligence, our conscious mind is, right? If with your conscious mind, you want to go this direction, but your subconscious mind is not okay with that. If your subconscious wants to go this direction, you're going to go this direction, right? And so I found this when I was in practice. I'd have to sometimes tune into the subconscious mind and ask questions. If a patient wasn't getting well, and I was doing everything I was supposed to be doing, sometimes I would have to come back and ask questions like, are you okay to get well? Is it safe for you to get well? Will people still like you if you get well? Things like that. And sometimes finding those underlying belief systems sometimes, in many cases can be really, really powerful as far as helping you to really move ahead. Because, and it can affect us in all areas of life. There was, I worked on someone, for example, who was pregnant, but having difficulty with the pregnancy, and found that there was a belief that that this pregnancy was not going to go well, et cetera. And clearing those beliefs made everything shift. And these beliefs can be formed early, sometimes in childhood, and it's just the subconscious mind is kind of like a black box in a way, and sometimes it'll put things together in a way that might not be the best for you. Mm-hmm. Like, for example, let's say that you can't lose weight. For example, there's a woman that I can think of who couldn't lose weight no matter what she did. And it turned out that the reason for it was this subconscious belief that when she was a kid, what happened was her mother lost weight and became more attractive, promptly had an affair, destroyed the whole family. And so she had this belief that if she lost weight, it would destroy her marriage too. And so sometimes getting to those, it's like the next level up, really, the belief code.
Because
yeah,
it's like the subconscious is oddly trying to protect you with that that belief, saying don't lose the weight. But
exactly.
It's not really helping you. It's a weird protection, but
that's exactly what it is. It's a protective mechanism, but then sometimes it might be great at the time, but maybe not so great later.
Yeah. All right. So so where can like listeners, et cetera, we got the website. Do we have any social media platforms that you want to mention? Are we online with anything like a Facebook or is Instagram, anything like that, Dr. Bradley?
Yeah, we've got, also my website, drbradleynelson.com. It's drbradleynelson.com. That's my personal site. And then we've got corresponding sites on Instagram. There's Dr. Bradley Nelson, and then there's also Discover Healing. Those two. So Discover Healing is it's our company, and it's kind of our umbrella brand around all of these different things. So yeah, you can find us on all of those platforms. We're pretty much everywhere.
And are you still traveling and speaking?
Yeah. In fact, my wife and I will be over in Europe for 2 months this year, teaching. We have seminars lined up in London, in Poland. Where else? I don't know. Italy, Copenhagen.
Nice.
So when's your next time in the States that you'll be training or doing anything like that?
We've got I think we've got an online training coming up. We have a couple of them coming up. I think one's in April for the emotion code, an online training. It's a 1-day training. And then we have an online training in the body code coming up. I think it's in May. If you go to discoverhealing.com and you go to the events tab, then you can see all the stuff that's going on where we're going to be.
That's perfect. We really appreciate you taking the time today, kind of walk us through, the different ins and outs of both, the emotion code, the body code, what's to come with the belief code. This is very exciting, and something I know the audience is very much eager to learn more about.
Yeah, and it's showing everyone out there, including us, what is actually possible for us, and we appreciate that.
Yeah, we're just beginning to scratch the surface, really, on what we're capable of. We're divine beings, and wow, it's like we've just been living under a rock, and now we're finally starting to wake up. And it's really unlimited, I think.
Yeah.
But we're just beginning. Yeah, and this is part of that. So thank you both so much for having me on. This has really been a lot of fun.
All right, thank you, Doctor.
Absolutely, Dr. Bradley. We'll see you soon.
Yeah.